Welcome everybody. This is Activities Across Grade Levels, and today's theme, compare and contrast, or compare and contrast, however you want to look at it. We are excited to have you here because we've got all sorts of ways of interpreting this kind of theme. We thank you for joining us, whether you are with us live as we record it, or whether you are watching it as a recording, and we have lots and lots of other material that we have put into a good 20 episodes or so worth of activities across grade levels, and you can find those on the nextvista.org site. If you have ideas that you want us to cover, feel free to send those to us. We are very interested in how people look at the different things they're facing, particularly with the challenges of teaching online, and what kinds of things that we could describe in terms of activities might be useful to you. So thank you goes out to Fowler Unified School District, your people, Susan.
My people, thank you for those of you who are watching now and to those of you who will watch later.
Absolutely. All of the good folks up in Jerome, we wish you well as well. I hope your year is starting off right. And thanks to Richard Byrne of Free Tech for Teachers for the good work he does, sharing about all kinds of free technology and the work we do on our webinar together. Two EdTech guys take questions and share cool stuff. So you can catch that. Oh, that's not even the right time. So I'll just switch right by that because it's next Thursday at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. And you can find that on the webinars page at nextvista.org. All right, Susan, please introduce yourself.
Hello, friends. My name is Susan Stewart. I'm an instructional technology coach in Fowler, California. I have the pleasure of serving 126 K-12 teachers in my role as technology coach. Before being a technology coach, I spent 14 years teaching kindergarten and second grade, and I'm the mom of 3, and I'm very fortunate to be here working with Rushton.
Equally fortunate to be working with Susan is me, Rushton. I am a former high school teacher of Japanese language, a former principal of a K-12, and then an online high school. And then I started a little nonprofit called Next Vista for Learning at nextvista.org. It's a collection of videos by and for teachers and students everywhere, free to use, free to contribute to, free to download from. So feel free to give that a look. And there are videos there about academic topics and communities around the world and service to others. We've got things on careers, on learning English, on advice for teens, and all sorts of possibilities. So we hope that the 2,700 or so videos we've put in our little library here will be of value to you this year. All right, so how does this particular webinar work? Answer is that what we do is we take a theme and then we talk about what it looks like for the K-2 crowd, the upper elementary crowd, 3rd through 5th, the middle school crowd, and then the high school crowd. And as we go through all of those things, we hope that we're going to give you an idea or two that might be valuable as you think about it for the work you do. So let's start with the young learners. And Susan, you are up.
Absolutely. So talking about young learners and helping them find similarities and differences in things, that really starts with just giving them perspective that there are similarities and differences, just understanding those words and finding how we're alike and how we're different. Sometimes we'll give them texts. One way that you see this activity done sometimes is you'll see 2 texts on a similar topic, but here we see that one is informational text and one is a narrative, and just pointing out, I noticed some things. What do you notice about this? Well, this one's drawings and this one's photographs. This one gives me facts and details. This one has a story with characters. And so pausing and saying, giving some of those sentence frames, especially for our language learners here in Central California, give them, just a sentence starter. I know the story is fiction because, and note some of those things, those key details that point out the idea, oh, I can tell. And I know this one's nonfiction because, again, characters, drawings, those things that we could point out. And they start noticing the similarities and differences between the 2 types of text. We can take that just a step further and use 2 informational texts on the same topic. So say I had 2 pumpkin books. And that really does, as I look in the California standards and the Common Core state standards, it sets the foundations for the topic we talked about last year in evaluating resources and making sure that we're, really aware of good quality resources, even in kindergarten, because I notice I read this book about pumpkins and it said this, and I read this book about pumpkins and it said the same thing. Oh man, 2 good resources give me the same fact, that must be a really good, true fact. And it really does start that foundation. When I can see the same information in multiple books, that tells me it's a quality source. And I can compare and contrast those facts that I find in the different resources on the same topic, setting those foundations for media literacy. Also with young learners, we talk about texts, and in this remote learning situation, sometimes we don't have our hands on books. That's a big challenge because I don't get to put books in their hands. So one thing I can give my learners is Epic books. You go to getepic.com and it gives you free resources for high quality text. These aren't just a few books. You're talking about 40,000 free texts on a wide variety of topics. I appreciate Epic because it's high interest, high quality literature. Nat Geo, you've got common trade books. Some of our favorite stories are available. Students can access them through their Chromebooks free from home. And again, giving them a wide variety. If I wanted to have a conversation about finding similarities and differences so we can compare and contrast, we take something that everyone knows about, food, right? We all know about food. That's something that our young learners can understand. And we can show books the kinds of foods that people eat from all around the world, and just start to notice, how is my food like their food? Just really starts to set those foundations that people have similarities and difference too. Maybe how we look, the things we eat, and that really starts building foundations and building compassion and understanding for people who are different from us. So a lot of books available there at Epic that can help compare and contrast the things that we learn from those texts. Moving on just a little bit to some of the upper elementary students, we can talk about compare and contrast at just a different level. I love discourse when it comes to math dialogue, and one of my favorite resources is Which One Doesn't Belong, wodb.ca, because the whole idea of finding out, which one doesn't belong. I have to sit and compare 3 of those and find the one thing that's different about one. What is different? Finding those tiny little nuances. And of course, if you've ever done a WODB, you realize there's always more than one right answer, right? Almost always more than one right answer. So you have to find the things, find the three that compare them. How are they alike? And find that one little thing about the 4th one that makes a difference. And of course, part of the standards for mathematical practice have us constructing viable arguments to explain the answer, right? So I think that 27 doesn't belong because it's the only one that doesn't have a 6 in it, right? That might be one reason. And that's a simple reason. There's a lot of different, we can see that 3 of them are square numbers, but constructing those arguments, but you have to compare all 4 numbers in order to find that one that is different. And again, creating frames for dialogue in math is a practice we can have students use to build that compare contrast. I agree with your answer because, right, giving an argument there, or the reason I chose a different answer. So I'm going to contrast. I'm saying you chose this one, I chose this one, and having that frame for conversation, and of course an opportunity for it. Right now we're having our meetings in this online environment, and it's a habit of teachers sometimes to ask people to mute. But encouraging opportunities for that dialogue and math discourse is a really great way we can continue to build those skills in comparing and contrasting, but just talk, let them talk about it, right? Let them have those arguments, try to defend their answers. So moving on again with the upper elementary, one idea that I got, actually this is from our friend Mari Venturino from San Diego. She does this visual lesson plan, and visual argument, right? Trying to compare and contrast 2 things. And right there on a page, she will, 2 photos, 2 sides of the same argument, right? Two sides of the same topic, and give the pro and the con to that visually. So we can talk about what are the pros of wind turbines, what are the cons of and using this visual way to tell the story really works with those upper elementary kids. And maybe I provide the photos, they provide the arguments, or maybe I provide the arguments or maybe I give one side and they give the other side. Lots of ways to scaffold your learners into these tasks. Maybe I, do one, or maybe they take an opportunity to collaborate with a peer and bring this together. So many great ways we can have them compare and contrast a certain topic. So that's a great lesson plan structure from Mari, who she does this with her learners as well. And it's just those visual arguments, a visual way to compare and contrast the similarities and difference, or the pros and the cons on a topic.
So let's take it up to middle schools. What do our middle schoolers kind of deal with in the space of compare and contrast? There are so many possibilities for this. I mean, one of the things about a theme like compare and contrast is that there's a lot of room for how you interpret it, right? And I decided that giving folks some visuals as a way of stopping to say, might be a good way to get your middle schoolers engaged in this idea. What we have here are two videos. So the first one is called Pendulum Waves, right? And what this is a video that's all about how you think about, how things happen with pendulums and how it looks. And at the same time that this is happening, you are seeing there's some music going on in the background, but visually it's kind of one of those kind of eye-catching things, right? So you see these things, kind of lower down towards this, and boom, it starts, right? And so you begin to look and you say, okay, well, what is it that we're seeing? Why is it interesting? Things like that. And then I said, okay, well, what if we took another video that was designed to get people thinking about something that they see? And in this case, it's a video about laying bricks. And you might say, well, laying bricks, I don't know what. However, there are loads of things to see as you watch this person do what they do. So the whole idea of, what are the techniques that are a part of this? Are these interesting? Do they strike you in the same way that the one about the pendulum does? Is the video built differently? Are there ways of thinking about how people do things that require precision, but also, kind of focus and almost an artist sense that might be interesting to you? So I put a couple of videos in there that both have a certain power to mesmerize, we'll say, as a way of kind of launching an activity with your students. How can that be something that allows them to see similarities and differences in how people approach telling stories visually? Now, also for our middle schoolers, I am really, really into the idea that when you give students an assignment, you do not show them only one example of how that assignment works. I've talked about this on the show before, where, what happens when you give an assignment and you give one example of how that looks pretty good? Well, everybody tries to copy the one example. And I thought, let's give people something to work with. So in the space of video, there are a lot of ways to make a video. You can make a screencast, you can make a art, that you speed up and you narrate, you can do footage, you can bring images together and narrate over those. There's just a lot of different ways to make a video. Stop motion, right? So when you look at a lot of different kinds of videos, especially if they're short and they're student created, because for students, seeing things that other students have created is interesting. So we have this document, this particular document that's linked on this page, which you can find via the slides, because once you go back to the page when we post all this, you can go to the slides, you can go to the links and get it to it directly, either way. And what it has is 8 sets of 3 videos each. Now, actually, they could just be 24 videos in a row. I mean, the 8 sets actually don't make any difference. But imagine telling your students, pick any 3 that interest you. As you look at the different titles, what interests you? Zombie Way, that's going to be like a big popular one for a lot of your kids. But we're also trying to get them to think about using different sets of videos in different ways. So there's a tiny URL for this particular page. You are welcome to use it with your kids. We hope that will be a way to get them thinking about variety in what they do. Now, I also mentioned defaults up here. What am I talking about with that? So when you think about assignments for kids, a lot of teachers will give assignments where they say, okay, I want you to do this and I want you to do it this way, right? So I want you to make a video using this tool, or I want you to make a slide presentation using PowerPoint, or whatever it may be. And while there's nothing wrong with giving what I'd call a default assignment, you might give people a little room to try something different. They can surprise you and get you excited about seeing something maybe you haven't seen before. So if you tell the kids, all right, everybody, we're going to do a 1-page paper that's due a week from Friday. But if you'd like to do something different, and by the end of this week, not next week when it's due, but this week, you give me a plan and I approve it, you may do this assignment differently. But you have to show me that you can work with the material that we've been learning. So you're holding their feet to the fire with regard to the content, but you're giving them choice and new possibility for how they present it. Now, those kids who are like, just tell me what to do, I want to be a boring person. Okay, fine. All right, here you go. Here's the default assignment. Just do that. Follow these, thanks. Those kinds of moments, that's fine. But let's take it up to high school, because while all of these things we've talked about so far actually have a home with kids all the way across age groups, right? We want to see, like, what is it going to look like when you're really beginning to push these kids academically. Now, I think that there are a lot of things to be learned from working with organizations that do crazy cool stuff. So one of my favorites is Magic Wheelchair. And if you find the great big story, matter of fact, I'll search that up for you and get it in the links, for you. But I'll do it actually while I'm telling you about it. So, great big story, Magic Wheelchair. And let's just see what pops up. And there it is right there. And that gives me a little YouTube link. And what I'm going to do, the chicken McNugget thingy or whatever it is not the big deal. But I'm putting that in the chat. And this video is about the story of Magic Wheelchair. And what it is this guy who has 3 kids who have conditions that mean that they're in wheelchairs. And so he began to see things, that he thought were important in one way or another. And one of the moments that really stood out for him was a moment when his kid wanted to dress up as a pirate for Halloween. Well, okay, great. Kid's in a wheelchair. So, kids want to dress up Halloween. That's kind of what Halloween's about, right? Well, what he did was he said, let's incorporate the wheelchair into the costume. And so they made this pirate ship out of the wheelchair. And so suddenly the kid who's in the wheelchair has the coolest costume in school, right? And how interesting a moment that is for the child. And so what you see here is, a kid in a racing car and little girl who is Wonder Woman in her invisible, they made an invisible plane. I mean, how cool are these people? Now, how does that relate to what we're talking about? When you think about a charity, what's a charity? Is that just like giving people food? I mean, like that's a perfectly good thing to do, but is that what a charity is? Getting kids to really begin to say, what about like something like Magic Wheelchair versus something like the Humane Society? How are they the same? How are they different? How do they approach what they do in different ways? Is their business model similar or different in some fashion? And those kinds of questions are really, really interesting ones for getting kids to see the community in new ways. Additionally, I brought this up, not because I'm that specifically interested in the difference between Kahoot and quizzes, although those are 2 interesting tools. If you are not familiar with quizzes, then by all means, make sure you give it a look. It's cool. Everybody seems to know Kahoot, but these are slightly different. And what you see in quizzes is something that a lot of teachers are really excited about in terms of differences with Kahoot. Now, for a lot of teachers, that means like, oh, quizzes allows me to do this and this and this, so it's better than Kahoot. Well, actually, I think it's a good idea to have both of these games kind of like in your tool belt and to play them both with students in order to ask them to compare and contrast the 2 different ed tech tools as a way of talking about their own learning. So rather than being the person who's constantly guiding what happens, you will do this now, follow, click here, right? Instead, kind of be in that space of saying, hey, we just tried this today. Last week we did this other thing. What do you think? Was one of them better for your learning than other? Why? Than the other? Why? Talk to me about that. How did you approach it? So as you talk to kids about their own assignments, you are developing a certain kind of rapport with them. A lot of kids never hear their teachers ask them about their learning. They'll ask them about how they're doing with the learning that they're being asked to do, but that's different than asking about the process of learning. And that's something that's true for high schoolers and all the way down. Kids can give us good ideas about their learning if we ask.
I love that idea, and I'm going to tag on to that, especially just sometimes when I talk to teachers and they say, oh, I love this hyperdoc you made. How did you find all those videos? How did you go through and select and pick those videos? And I tell them, I don't. I'll put 6 or 7 on there and I'll let the students have at it. And I'll say, you guys tell me, which one did you like best and why, right? And just that idea of having them stop and evaluate. We know that evaluate is a really high level comprehension skill. If they're going to be comparing, well, I like this one because it had this, and they're really having to understand. And so instead of just picking the one best, like you said here, let's try them all. And then let's compare and contrast. Let's decide what are the features of each that really make it the best experience for kids. I used to do that with games. I'd find 12 different games about synonyms on the internet. Here, you guys, here are all of them. Have at it. Now tell me which one. Well, I really like the one with the song because it got stuck in my head and I kept having pairs of, so those moments where they can see the differences, that's the money right there, right?
And we can compare and contrast how that looks at students, or like with students. So you can imagine for little kids learning to voice those ideas, right? And then learning to say things like, I liked this one better for this reason, but when I heard Susan say this, I thought that was interesting for that reason, right? So you can begin to build the kinds of discussions they have, and you can have fun with that at the high school level, where they kind of take on the language of being in court. Well, when the lawyer for the for the defense said blah blah blah, or whatever it is. I mean, just have fun with it. There are lots of moments that kids encounter every day in school that are a whole lot like every other day they've been in school. And so if you bring something a little different in, you create a contrast to what they typically experience. You're giving them the opportunity to think about their own learning in new ways. So, promising resources. We actually are looking at nothing in this one. Why? Because I forgot to remove these slides. Let's compare and contrast his approach to bringing these particular slides together. Look at this as kind of a Zen thing. What would be a promising resource to you? This is your chance to add these kinds of ideas in. Thank you very much. Now, what we do for our kids is we care, right? We care about them, we care about their learning, and to do that properly, we have to care for ourselves. This is one of the messages of the webinars that Next Vista puts out, right? You have to kind of take care of yourself. Find opportunities to say something nice to somebody else, right? Do little kindnesses, the kind of stuff that re-energizes you. You need that energy. You need the opportunity to be able to go back when a kid says something a little strange, and you can go, that was fascinating, but I still think you have a bright future. The kid's like, I think she just insulted me. Those kinds of things are good moments for how they think about their learning. We have a newsletter. We hope that you will take a look at this newsletter because there's all kinds of cool things in it. Every month I put out stuff that has things about the different contests we're running, the projects, cool ideas out there that schools are sharing with their communities, and loads of freebies, things you might want to watch or read or try. Any of that stuff is available in the monthly newsletter. And if you sign up, you will also note that there is the Super Sips section. Super Sips, what's that? That is your opportunity to win a $5 Starbucks card. Why? Because it's kind of fun and cool. Why? It's just kind of fun. I'm happy to send you one. Wow, do a lot of people enter? No, I have no idea why, but there you go. Your odds are good, so you know. All right, I write a blog called Inspiring Improvement. A lot of content for teachers, for leaders, for service club people. Just the idea is to get stuff out there that might be useful as you see the world around you. And I've written some books about how to be a better teacher, little things like making your teaching something special, 50 different ways to get better as a teacher. Those are really short chapters, like 2 to 3 pages each. The idea is that you might just open up to anything during lunch while you're wolfing something down before the next period starts, and you go, oh yeah, maybe I'll try that. That's the idea. Making your school something special is about how to foster and share stories of success in your community, how to ramp up learning activities so that they're the kinds of things that kids will remember years from now. And then finally, Technology, Teamwork, and Excellence, which is a book for book for leaders about how to use tech to do great things with their community and to improve the environment personally and professionally for everybody. So if you have questions, feel free to toss them into the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. We typically will finish off the recording and then answer the questions you have. We're going to probably do that again because that is just kind of our pattern. If you have questions about the program itself, feel free to send them to us. Susan, how can people get in touch with you? And you're muted.
They can get in touch with me by having me turn my mic on so I can be heard. And you're muted. Tech Coach Susan on the internet, on Twitter, Tech Coach Susan. You can also follow the hashtag K2 Canton. Right now, if you follow that hashtag, you're going to see a lot of excitement from our event last weekend. So a lot of teachers shared out what they learned at our big event. We had, I think, 180 teachers enroll in our event. It was very, very wonderful. Lots of sessions just for young learners, and the learning and the community that was created there. It was so wonderful.
That's cool. Now, this was the K2 Canton Summit, right?
Hmm.
And Coach Ben Cogswell was your keynote, I believe.
Absolutely, he
All
was.
right. And so what were some of the takeaways for you just in terms of specific things that people might have been talking about or how people reacted to it or anything like that?
I think it is just that idea of having high expectations for our young learners, right? Don't
Mhm.
assume that just because they're little that they can't do something. And also that we can still merge that idea of analog and digital. Just because we're learning through the computer doesn't mean everything has to be on the computer. I can still do a lot of hands-on learning. It's just that that balance of digital and analog really needs to be consideration when teachers are planning. Just because it can be on a worksheet on the computer doesn't mean that, I mean, I always talk about, my son and his dinosaurs. The teacher will go say, go get 10 of something. Where does he go? He goes and gets 10 dinosaurs. And maybe one student will go get 10 spoons, and how we can bring the school and the home together during this time. A lot of that was, having high expectations, uh, bringing yourself, like as the teachers, we have to bring ourselves, we have to connect, and just having those high expectations for our little learners because they can do a lot.
Cool. Since we're talking about Coach Ben, I'll throw the Kinder Rockets site into the chat as well. We'll get that into the links. Coach Ben's work to kind of really energize, kind of the educational experience with online learning with his kids is inspirational. My name is Rushton Hurley. I am here in San Jose, California, doing the stuff I do and working with a lot of good people in a number of different schools, kind of all over the world. A lot of good stuff with Sarah High School up in San Mateo. Go Padres, love you guys. And I hope that over the course of the coming days, you'll find one or more of these ideas, something that gets you excited about how you might reach that next student. So with that, we will finish the recording and then just kind of hang out with the folks who joined us live. So I hope that you have a really, really good week and that we will see you next Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Take care.